Thanks, Kim. Thank y'all for letting me share, and have a good night. I want to elaborate a little bit about what Kim shared. And I was okay, but I got nervous when we did the mic check, because then it's like I can hear me, and I don't need to hear me right now. And so I'm really waiting on God, to kick me off this stage and take his place, because I finally have accepted that I am inadequate, but I've got a God that provides everything. And as long as I thought I was adequate, I couldn't allow him in. So I'm just trying to get out the way so he can steal this show. A few months ago when Kim asked me to do this, y'all know I live by I get to. But when she asked me to do this on this night, I didn't feel like I get to. I was a little reluctant because it's painful and it's sad. It's also redemptive and it's joyful. So I'm going to get through all of that, hopefully. But when she asked me, I wrote down some notes because there were some things that were really fresh, and I wanted to be able to convey those to you tonight. I wanted to tell you about how my world got real, real dark, and what some of those things that happened in life that caused my life to get dark. But I also want to let you know how God intervened and how he continues to show up for me. There seems to be that three things happen in my life, like bam, bam, bam. I don't get hit with one big thing. I get hit with bam, bam, bam. It's just what happens in my life. And one of those things that happened was my relationship ended. And I'm talking about this relationship, that parts of it were so easy and so comfortable and so good that I still grieve those parts. But there were other parts that weren't. And I couldn't stay. And it was sad. And my relationship with my daughter and a lot of my other family was difficult and painful. And it wasn't what I dreamed my relationship with my little girl was going to be. Because the relationship I had with my mother, I wanted a relationship with my daughter that was totally different. And through a lot of work and Kim pointing out some things, it was kind of similarities. And there was abandonment on both ends. And a whole nother subject could go on about that, but I won't. And then it seemed like some of my friends betrayed me, and indeed they may have. And that hurt. And I felt alone. And I was sad. And I wanted to go home. I know that sometimes when life shows up, people get angry at God. I just wanted to go be with God. I didn't want to be with y'all anymore. I didn't want to feel the pain and the anger and the loneliness and the confusion, the betrayal. I just wanted to go be with my Father. And so I thought long and hard, and I didn't want to inconvenience anybody with a mess. I didn't want to include anybody else in my plan. And so I came up with a really good plan. And I came up with the perfect date. And it was June 16th, 2019. You see, that was Father's Day. And I was going to go be with my father on that day. And I had this all planned, and I wrote a letter, and it was full of pain and anger. And then I went to the first Wednesday night service at Mosaic. And I'm going to plug Mosaic right here, because if you haven't been to a first Wednesday night service, it is raw, it is real, it is vulnerable. And I cry every time, because the Holy Spirit just comes in and takes over and has his way with me. But on this particular Wednesday night, I had this planned in my head, and I wasn't telling anybody because I didn't want anybody to get in the way of my plan. But God had another plan. And that night, as Kim said, she got on that stage, and I saw her. And I see Kim the way she described to me. You know, she's the strong woman. She's the helper. She's that. And she got on that stage that night broken and in pain. And I couldn't add to that pain. I couldn't put more pain on top of that because I believe she loves me. And if she didn't have me in her life wouldn't be the same. And in that moment, I was like, okay, I got to change the date. It can't be this soon. I got to postpone it a few months. And then she said what she said. And God said, cool. I was like, And God said, it's okay. I was like, I don't want to. So he shoved me, because it wasn't my doing to go to that stage. And he stood on that, he took me to the front of that stage. And I said, I want to go home. And so Kim and I talked, and like before that night, I kept praying and I kept praying for a miracle, and I'd text Kim and say, hey, I need to see you. I didn't tell her exactly where I was at or how desperate and lonely and dark my world was. I just said, I need to see you. And she's like, I really don't have any availability right now. I said, okay, God, you know what's going on, and if that was going to be my miracle, you'd have worked that out. So I continued on with my plan. Well, that night, after I told Kim my plans, and I said, somebody needs to really come get my gun. And so I called a lady who lives pretty close to my home, who I love and I trust. And she was in Charlotte, and she wasn't near home, because I live in Kannapolis, and she wasn't home. So I said, okay. So I called another lady that I love and I trust, and she wasn't available either. I was like, okay. So Kim gets this, I don't know, Cody's 7'11" or something, guy in the back. And she said, hey, will you go to Cindy's house with her and get her gun? And I'm like, I'm thinking, I don't know this guy. And you're going to send him to my house? But in that moment, I was willing. In that moment, God had taken over my life. In that moment, my plan was no longer valid and his was. But see, I'd been praying for a miracle. I wanted a miracle. Like I wanted this burning bush miracle, right? I wanted God to be so obvious in my life that I couldn't deny it. And I didn't get that until I looked at Cody. Now, Cody's this big dude, if y'all know him, in this red shirt, right? Close enough to a burning bush for me. And here's the part I want to tell you. His name's Cody. Now, when God does stuff, there's no denying that God does stuff. So this man named Cody wasn't my Cody. You see, my Cody's my grandson, who's redheaded, and who changed my heart, because I didn't know I could love somebody as much as I loved him. But I had a place in my heart that I had reserved for him until my first grandchild was born. And I couldn't allow Cody to believe that my plan was the answer to anything. I couldn't leave him with that. And so this Cody came to my house, and he got my gun and my bullets, and he left. And the moment he walked out of the door, I was angry. I had given away my method to carry out my so carefully planned out arrangement, and I no longer had that. So, but I continued to pray, and Google other methods, because I wasn't quite ready to stay. Days went on. I cried myself to sleep. I started working with Kim again. And there's a courageous little 4-year-old that runs around Mosaic today because of that. And that's that little Cindy. You might see her once in a while. She's got this little blue and white dress on, and not a care in the world. Just exactly as it should be. But it took a lot of work to let her free. And we continued to do work. And today I want to be here. You know, God has continued to show up for me. And right after this, he gave me Matthew 28:20. I am with you always. Always. That means good, bad, ugly, painful, always. It's an absolute, and I rarely use them, but that one applies. And I started to see 28:20 in all kind of places because, see, I was praying for miracles. I just wasn't ready to see them. And I remember sitting at this red light in this huge piece of concrete on this flatbed truck, and it said 28:20. I texted Kim. I said, Kim, look, God's with me at the red light. He's with me always. And I take that. I'm with you always. And he gave me this, and it's this little journey because, see, I wanted just to go sit in my Father's lap, and what he let me know is that I didn't have to take myself out to do that. And he gave me a way of doing that. And what he gave me was, I visualized all these dark clouds, these clouds of pain and confusion and failed relationships and betrayal and just all the negative stuff. And as I go through those dark clouds, I push them away, and I just keep pushing them away. And then the clouds get a little bit lighter, just a little bit lighter. And I can start walking through those clouds that seem to be a little bit lighter until I'm walking on those clouds. And I start to feel the sunlight, and I start to feel the warmth, and I start to feel the love. And I look up, and there he is. There is my Father, and he's sitting cross-legged with his arms wide open, waiting on me. And I crawl up in his lap, and I just wiggle into that real comfortable position, and I let him embrace me so I can feel his love and his comfort. And all that stuff of those dark clouds can go away. And he tells me that I can come there as much as I want to, as much as I need to. I can come sit in his lap because he is with me always. And so I go there often. One day I was there, and he says, get up, because we talk to each other like that. I was like, what? He said, get up. I say, I want to stay here. He said, you can come back. He said, but I got a plan for you, and you can't do it sitting here. I was like, I don't want to. He said, yeah, get up. So I got up, and I said, okay, so what's the plan? And he said, I want you to go show the world my love. I said, okay. He said, but I want you to start with yourself. That one's a little harder. See, I can love y'all when I don't love me. And thank God I got a big old God that loves me in spite of all that. You know, he's given me examples too. Like, you ever been at dinner with a friend and they grab the check and they say, I got it. I got you. And this happened one time. And I said, thanks. I really appreciate that. And then God, being God, says, see, that's what it's like. I got you. And I didn't have to worry about why he's got me. I don't have to worry about, well, maybe your resources could be used better with somebody else. No, I got you. I got you. Because what he told me was, I'm big enough that I got all of you. So don't worry about that. You know, back when my world was real dark and I finally got the courage, and I don't know if it was mine, I know it wasn't, but when I was finally given the courage to start telling people exactly where I was at, and you know how people will say, how are you? And it's really a greeting more than a question. And I'm a very literal person, so if you ask me, how are you? Be ready for an honest answer. So people would say, how are you? I'd say, severely depressed and suicidal. They weren't ready for that. They were not ready to hear that kind of truth. Not everybody can handle that truth. But the ones that heard me, sometimes they say, oh, but we need you. I did not care that you needed me. That was like one of the worst things people said to me. Like, I don't even want to be here right now. I don't even care about me right now. Do you think I care about what your needs are? It was so hurtful to me to hear that. You know, there's some things that I would have missed out on if I'd have went on with my plan. And there's this little guy. He's almost 4 months old. His name's Noah. You know, the one that God had built a new ark for a whole new beginning? Yeah, he's my great-grandson. And if I'd have carried out my plan, I'd have never got to meet Noah. Right? I would have never got to meet this little guy who is so happy and joyful just as a little guy should be. If I'd have carried out my plan, I wouldn't have got to see my granddaughter graduate with honors and get a full ride. You know, I wouldn't have got to see my other granddaughter turn 14 yesterday. There's so many things that have happened that if I had carried out my plan, I wouldn't have got to experience. So every day from June 16, 2019 to today, I say, God, this is your plan. Because it was never my plan to be here. So whatever his will is for my life, I ask him to make it extremely obvious to me and give me the power and the willingness to carry that out. And he's told me is to show the world his love and that I need to stay here in order to do his plan until his plan is complete. And so on the days when it gets hard and it gets dark and it gets sad and it gets lonely, I remember this isn't my plan. I gave my plan up over a year ago. This is his plan. And however it is he chooses to use me, even if it's on this stage tonight, even if it's with a heavy heart in moments, I want you to know that he has overcome. And that whatever it is that I go through or that you go through, he is so much bigger than that. That he's got me. He's got me. He's got you. And you. And you. Thank you.